you'll hear us. We'll go ahead and call the Public Works and Sustainability meeting to order. It is May 22nd. Time is about 7:45 p.m. Getting a little bit of a late start, but great meeting, last meeting, and certainly don't mind the additional public comment there. So first order of business would be the approval of the minutes. So without objection, those will stand approved. Hearing no objection, those minutes are approved as written and without a reading. So that brings us to our only other item, and we have the Planning Department administration here with us, as well as other members. All members of the committee are present. So we can just put a brief pause. I know he's talking to constituents in the hallway. Oh, there he is. Sean, you're up. No, thank you for your public service. We're pulling you away from other very important business. So thank you for all you do. But if you want to just give us a quick overview of what's going on, where we're at in this RFP process with Winterhurst, give us the rundown, and then I'm sure my colleagues and other members may have some questions for you.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So we put this communication in front of City Council with the purpose of knowing that we are in the process of changing the operational model for Winterhurst and are working through a selection process to identify a new operator for the facility. Knowing that legislation will be coming, we want to start a conversation with City Council now. Given the timing that we are on, we will likely need a relatively quick decision from City Council to take action on who the new operator is once that person is selected. The current schedule we're on is RFPs. So we've already had an RFQ process where we had 8 submissions. We shortlisted that down to 4. And at the City Council meeting, you asked who those 4 were. We shared that information. Those 4 are now preparing proposals for us to review. Those will be submitted on this Thursday? This Friday. Those will be submitted. We will reconvene as a city staff. We will reconvene with our advisory committee, who includes a lot of the tenant organization, or all the tenant organizations that are eligible within the Winterhurst facility themselves. Council President Litton has also been part of that, invited to be part of that committee as well. We'll get their input. We'll make a selection. We'll put legislation in front of City Council, perhaps as soon as June 5th, if not June 19th, with knowing that the lease will end on June 30th, so we would need to have a decision very quickly with City Council. So our goal is to answer any questions about the process leading up to the selection of the individual organization that will be selected to operate the facility. And then once we're able to put legislation in front of you with that operator named, we can invite them and ask specific questions of that group as well.
Good, thank you. Do you happen to have those companies submitted, or I guess it's something you're going to keep close to the vest just for fairness reasons? Have those 4 companies submitted RFPs yet?
No.
Okay.
So that's what's due on Friday. So what they provided to us already, 8 companies actually provided us, was called a request for qualifications. Right. And a request for qualifications, they basically submit their qualifications that demonstrate they are the best organization fitted to potentially operate Winterhurst Ice Rink. They also give us a little bit of insight about what their overall vision, with limited information that we've given them to at that point about how they intend to operate the facility. But generally, we made a short list selection based on qualifications of the organizations and their teams to then put together a detailed proposal for us. And the detailed proposal will be received on Friday.
Very good. I have one question, then I'll turn over to colleagues. In evaluating these final participants, or this final proposals rather, from the RFP, which we'll receive on Friday, is there some kind of objective scoring or rubric used to figure out which one will be ultimately selected, or?
Go ahead. Oh, who's got it? I think page 6. Page 6 has the scoring.
There it is.
So if you look at the bottom third of the page, you'll see the evaluation criteria. So that's how the evaluation criteria breaks out for the different individuals that we have reviewing both the RFQs and the proposals will be evaluating these documents as they get submitted to us. We try to make it as objective as possible. Certainly there's some subjectivity in it, but we try to make it as objective as possible.
Very good. Colleagues? Mr. Bullock?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the administration for working for some time diligently on this. What would be helpful to review, I'm just approaching this as a think out loud together to understand what priorities have changed in this round compared to previous years. It has come to light, I think, that there's two things that need better performance by our operator, whoever that will be. And one is community access. Two is cleanliness and general maintenance. What I've been hearing from user groups is that the locker rooms need attention. Female player locker room access needs to be increased, or capacity needs to be increased. Some of this is just basic stuff like graffiti. Kids mark up walls with inappropriate graffiti that needs to be cleaned on a timely basis. It hasn't been. And then you're not maintaining a family environment. So I don't know if that is detailed here or sufficiently, or maybe I should phrase that. Is that detailed here? And I'm not recalling if in previous rounds and leases how specifically we called out those kinds of matters. I think it's important that we do so, given our recent experience. And then the same thing goes for community access. I think that the belief years ago was that a private operator would be responsive to the market and balance appropriately the need for open skate with the need for league and figure skating lessons. But I think our experience in recent years has been that the latter has been prioritized over a balanced approach. Number one, do you think that's accurate? Number two, is that something we're addressing?
So I think all the comments you made, yes, are accurate. And then specifically, is it entirely fleshed out in the RFQ? No, but there's a big bulk of it, or in the RFP. But there is a large bulk of it laid out on the top of page 2, which is the purpose statement about what we're trying to accomplish with this change in operational arrangement for the facility. I think the one thing that we do not talk about in the RFP that perhaps others can chime in as well is just the economic model that we currently operate on. Right now, it is very much we are a landlord and there is a business operating in the city's facility. So that community responsiveness aspect is lost sometimes because there is a business that's operating and trying to generate revenue and profit and to be successful. We are changing that model to now take it back and instead of having a business operating our facility, we are going to operate our facility, and we're going to do that with an operator that is qualified to operate an ice rink facility. And we believe we have 4 very qualified operators that we've been able to identify through this RFP process.
So if I can interject, so the model would be, city's the operator, we're going to hire a third-party operator, but we're going to be in a day-to-day or at least a quarter-to-quarter manner, keeping eyes on.
Think of the operator as our Department of Winterhurst Ice Rink Facility. That's who we're hiring. Not unlike what we do as services for the community. We just simply don't have the expertise on staff to provide that, so we have to outsource that, and so that's what we're doing.
Okay. And who would the supervising city director or employee be?
So those are a lot of the conversations that we're having internally right now. It'll probably be a team of people between Public Works and planning. While we work through that, we'll probably also have somebody from the finance department involved as well, because there'll be a lot of things that we'll have to work through initially. But those are conversations that we're working through to identify who's going to handle the day-to-day, and then how we're going to handle our regular check-ins with the operator. Certainly, Public Works is probably more appropriate day-to-day, as they're going to be dealing with facility issues and other things.
So it sounds like the RFP applicants have a certain amount of latitude in how they could propose the financial arrangement. So I mean, are they allowed to generate any kind of revenue for themselves, or they would
Absolutely.
build that into the fee, or you're open to different proposals?
So generally, how the structure is set is that they will operate at cost, and then there'll be a fee on top of, basically a management fee, if you will. We're not opposed to then some incentives if they generate certain amounts of revenue or new revenue. Right now, we don't have access to any of that revenue. That's generally, that is entirely with the current leaseholder. So we are open to working with the operators to if they can generate revenue for the city, however that gets generated. If they get to a certain point, perhaps then we start to share in some of that. That's part of the negotiation we'll have as we proceed forward with the selected operator.
And I'm sorry, one more question would be, we've got a capital plan and analysis, if not a plan, of the facility. Is that a separate conversation or somehow affecting this discussion? I would think that it would be difficult for an operator to generate enough revenue to entirely shoulder the capital expenses of an ice rink. So let me just say, I applaud the creative thinking, for lack of a better term, in revising the financial model here. I think that could hopefully bear fruit. Is there a scenario in which somebody may propose, okay, we could take on some of the capital expenses if we have certain financial incentives, or is that off limits?
I think that's absolutely something that's part of the conversation we need to have.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chair, for all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Mr. Baker, did you have questions?
Yes, and appreciate the administration, taking this on and being proactive and thoughtful. And it reminds me of a lot of stuff I do in my day job with, having, it's a tough line to walk between, you as a public entity being able to provide those services based, or you have more control over it, but you have more staff costs, more overhead. Or do you go out and let the market do it? And there's really no right answer. It's just kind of balancing it all. One thing I would say, and I talked to Director Vargo about this, but I want to make sure we are clear-eyed about it, because if we're creative in the way that we set this up, we can save $50,000 a year. And what that is the current tax bill on that building is about $54,000. And there are ways in which you can basically structure the deal, and I'm sure the law department, we talked about it a little bit, there's some case law out there. But one thing in particular is even like designating certain spaces as like, this is where the operator is, and it's only 3,000 square feet of a 70,000 square foot building. So it gives the Department of Tax a really easy way to say, well, then that percentage, 9% of the building, whatever it is now taxable and the rest isn't, so it saves you 90% of the tax bill. So I just think about that, although it's ironic because the tax bill goes back to the city and the schools as well. But if the intent of the facility is really to be a public benefit, then it really shouldn't pay taxes. And it should go back into the facility and the community, which is what it would do. But I am interested, it seems like we gave the proposers a lot of latitude to was exactly how they were going to do it. And I don't expect that the administration is going to tell us right now kind of which model they prefer, because you want to give the proposers some leeway in doing it. What I will ask is the other municipalities that so I think it's like Rocky River, Strongsville, other folks, what models do they have, and are they similar to this or are they different? So some analysis of that.
There we go. Sorry. So just to address that, the other models that are out there, I would say it's difficult to find, a clear example of exactly what we're looking for, because it's such a mixed bag in this area. If you go to, Mentor, Rocky River, those are municipally run ice rinks, totally different model in a city that has a Parks and Recreation department that also manages facilities, and they have their own staffs that run that. Now, Rocky River, single sheet of ice, it's only operated seasonally. It's shut down every single summer and drained, and it's used for their recreation programming over the summer as a concrete pad. Menor is another one that's part of their rec facility, just like North Olmsted has also run that way. So it's not just a rink, North Olmsted, there's a pool, there's a gym, there's other things that draw people to that kind of year-round. So our facility is unique in its dedication to the two sheets of ice that we have. And as Director Leininger mentioned, we're just not in a position to try to quickly replicate one of those other municipal models. And frankly, I don't necessarily think we need to. There's enough expertise out there, and that there are other kind of, whether you want to call them a public-private venture or something, to try to leverage some of the existing organizations that already work out of Winterhurst to try to make that. Programming is one of our biggest focuses, I think, here in terms of the community and that programming and building that programming. And so that's why I think the direction that we've taken, and I would just again highlight the purpose and the priorities on page 2, and all the details that are contained throughout what we're asking this operator to come forward with in terms of their operations and management approach. Hours of operation covers an awful lot about community, open skating opportunities, all of those things. And I would say we put a significant amount of work into section 3 of that collaborative programming development and marketing approach to try to really make or bring Winterhurst back to be kind of the premier regional rink facility, for skating sports year-round.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And a couple other things, just, because I'm sure we'll get into the proposals, but from a high level, I would encourage, I don't know if we have we included a model concessionaires agreement or operator agreement with the RFP. Did we? Or
We wrote the law department took a couple of the example model agreements that we had possession of that we were gearing towards, and then provided a memo into the document that really highlights kind of the general expectations of what we're going to be looking for as we negotiate that agreement.
yeah, and I saw that from a high level, but there's no.
We didn't put a model in.
Okay.
No.
Because I would say some of the things, we should think about, as we look towards the climate action plan we just passed, is it says the city will cover all utilities, and that was the old model as well. I think, and it sounds like we're going to be more, partners than, they just send us a bill, but we should think about that. It's funny, I toured around some places and met with some folks in the water division, and they were like, the meter at Winterhurst is crazy because they take so much water. So I'm sure it's other utilities as well. So it's a big building. We have solar panels on it. That's good. But I'm curious, and the answer could be no, but I feel like it's worth asking because the school district, so they operate, they have a rec department. Was it ever a discussion with them about them being a proposal or a partner on this?
I think, again, if you go back to section 3 under collaborative programming, and I apologize for not knowing exactly, but I know it's in here. There it is. So there's 3 lines of effort that we're asking these operators to propose their collaborative programming align, and it's along the lines of retain, support, and grow. And so underneath grow, those are pretty literal lines of effort in terms of what we want them to do in terms of the facility and the organizations that operate out of there. Under grow, it is proposing how they will leverage Lakewood-centric marketing and partnerships, i.e. Lakewood City Schools, to promote and expand. And I would call the base of the pyramid, if you're familiar with the American Development Model of programming, which you may or may not be, that it is a pyramid, and the base of the pyramid is the critical element of that, and it starts at that discover, play, learn stage of getting kids on skates and out to the facility. And so the schools, obviously, they have a central role in that, and I will say that just based on some of their contemporary changes with their staff at the district level, that the partnership that I think we've kind of been able to forge over the last year, not just in this effort, but has started to really bear fruit. And I think this is going to be a key effort going forward. And the city schools sit on our advisory group for this, and so it's not just a, a marketing and a communication thing, but I think they are, at least the feel and understanding that I have is that the city schools are very open in terms of looking at programming moving forward and being more involved in this, just as they were prior to and up to 1996, when the city schools and the rec department actually ran the programming at Winterhurst. So,
Any follow-ups, committee members? Council Vice President? Yeah, please.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's interesting reading through this. I think to that point about starting with that base of the pyramid of having, some of the feedback we were getting from the community was certainly about not having access, enough access to the rink for just the average community member. And it certainly seems like the intent here is to increase that access and making sure that that's clear. I did have a couple of questions. I noticed it talks about the operator proposing a fee schedule somewhere. Thanks. That the operator would propose a fee schedule, and then later on it talks about the potential of the operator getting, the city being opening to an operator getting bonuses or bonus above, and then also paying monthly, management. So an annual success bonus, and then a management fee. So is the fee structure that they propose intended to basically cover the management fee, or they get the fees and we pay them a management fee?
maybe I'm not trying to go, if I'm off base, please tell
Yeah.
me. So I kind of view them as independent and maybe mutually supporting, but not necessarily dependent on each other. The fee schedule we were looking for was to challenge the operators or the shortlisted operators to tell us how much they viewed would be a competitive rate for open skate rental, ice times, non-peak, peak, and I believe, and I can't, off the top of my head, I did write language in there to, be creative, explore other options, incentive options for organizations that, operate exclusively out of Winterhurst versus, we do have tournaments that come in nationally, regionally, and there are folks that only touch Winterhurst, once or twice a year versus somebody like me who's there like 7 times a week for a variety of things. But it's, so that's what I meant, I think, in terms of the language for fee schedule. The management fee, that's the negotiated piece of the operating agreement that we're paying them for the services that they're offering. I think, if that answers the question, or if there's more that you'd like, we can try.
Can I repeat back to you what I think I understand is happening, and you can tell me if I'm right? Is that, so we asked them to present a fee structure, so if you want to take your kid skating on Saturday morning, you pay this much money for 2 hours of free skate or whatever, and they're going to put together those numbers of what they think that should be, and then they would collect that money that would come to the city, and then we would end up paying them a management fee and potentially a bonus, let's say, because they take such a fabulous care of the property that they have more tournaments coming in and they make more money for us. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was just add, I think our interest in the fee schedule or fee structure is to make it more attractive and incentivize in terms of regional and local attendance at the facility. It's not necessarily tied to reimbursing the management or any of the revenue considerations in terms of the overarching building. There's no, and correct me if there's no number that we're looking, like if you were a leased operator or someone who You get all the revenue that comes in. You may set those fees based on how much money you need to get out of the facility to cover all of your costs. That's not necessarily their approach on this is a community municipal facility that we want to attract users to come into. There's no bottom line that we're trying to link those fees to meet at the end of each year, if that makes sense.
Sure, it's akin to the pool fees.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to make it so that people can afford to go there.
We also want to incentivize the operator to operate it at as low cost as possible and generate as much revenue too. So there's definitely a balance there to how we want the operator to think through how they operate this facility on the city's behalf.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask. Please. And then I might have missed it, just there's a lot here, and I know this isn't a final agreement, this is a, but is there a, some sort of plan for, you know, if the operator does not follow through with how we want them to be operating our ice rink? Like, is that worked into this? Is that part of the facility? I see Director Vargo nodding his head.
Thank you, council member. It will be. We will negotiate and work up the operating agreement. We're giving attention to it already. It obviously is only in draft form, but we'll want to negotiate protection for the city to address any non-performance by the operator, including early termination provisions, to the extent feasible, to the extent in our interest, because we want to maintain motivation for the operator. The operator is going to invest in this project. So it'll be a give and take on how much protection we can have to certainly terminate the agreement, but we will put safeguards in the agreement to maintain performance of the operator for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. And hopefully we can also add in a potential expansion should we get an outdoor ice rink at like the downtown development, for instance. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Just on, unless I see anything, on timeline. Oh, yes, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one last question and request of the administration is, sounds like we haven't sent a proposed agreement to the proposers. So if that's good, for my question, is there any way you can share the draft agreement with council under attorney-client privilege so we can take a look at it before you send it to the proposers, so we can have any questions? Or because once the cat's kind of out of the bag, then they know that's the baseline, and then you kind of, and to change anything is harder. So just curious if the administration would be willing to do that.
I mean, as counsel, I don't see any problem with that. I mean, as legal counsel, that agreement, to be meaningful, the draft, will have to await the identification of the operator, understanding of the proposal of the operator, and testing the margins of that, and coming up with some understanding of how this is going to look. Then the drafting will be meaningful. So it will be, we can get that to council prior to sending it in draft form to the operator. It may slow things down. We're going to be working under a tight schedule as it is because of the current operator. Right now, the current operator has to maintain operations through the end of June, so we have to be ready July 1. But we'll try to accommodate your request.
Even 24 hours, you know, I don't want to get in your guys' way, you know, but would be thankful for even a 24-hour ability to give you a call.
Thank you.
Mr. Leininger, do you have a thought? Okay.
I was suspecting you were going to ask about schedule, so that's.
Oh, yeah,
I was
well, real quick,
pushing the button.
just before that, I see a couple here, mentioned here a couple times, 5-year financial projections. Is it anticipated this contract would be a 5-year arrangement, or you left it blank on the sample operating and maintenance agreement?
We don't, that's something to be negotiated.
Okay.
Just as Director Vargo stated, that we'll have to work through the early termination, what's the length of the contract. Just from the proposal standpoint, yeah, we were asking to take a 5-year look out.
Right.
Does that imply there's going to be a 5-year contract? Perhaps, but that's not necessarily the case though either.
So, I mean, just judging on kind of some of the questions from council and colleagues, I think this is, first off, phenomenal, well done. I think, I love this direction we're headed with not, kind of, I'd say moving away from a public-private partnership, more into a city-controlled sort of subcontractor type arrangement where we have more control. And I'm sure when we see that, you know, agreement, it'll be built into there, that there's provisions that allow us to step in, as Councilmember Keppel mentioned, if there's something going the wrong direction, because that is certainly the one thing in the last couple of years I've heard is that folks just, they want to have a little more control over that, and we would like to be able to be more nimble. I'm glad to hear there'll be check-ins, you know, regularly with the operator. I know that's something that just wasn't sort of our standard operating procedure with the last sort of public-private partnership situation we had there. So I think this is headed the right direction. And now in terms of timeline, when did you again expect that this would be introduced? And I guess how long are we'll have over a weekend. I'm assuming it'll show up on the docket on a Friday, that first meeting in June, and then we'll have the weekend too. And would you be able to include the proposal itself along with the agreement?
Sure.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, yes, we would be able to include the proposal. And realistically, probably what you will see is on June 5th, we will introduce legislation that names who we've recommending as the operator, but it'll be without an agreement because we will need to draft that agreement between the 5th and the meeting on the 19th. I'm sorry, the 20th. Yes, thank you. And then we would substitute, then most likely, assuming we can find time on the council schedule for the night of June 20th, unless we can potentially do it the week of June 12th, but I'd just say we need that full 2 weeks to negotiate the agreement. The night of June 20th, before the general council meeting, to have a committee meeting where we can discuss the agreement, and then ask for council action on June 20th.
Okay, good. That was what I was getting at, hoping that we could have another committee meeting to kind of dig into the proposal itself. So that, I'm glad. I was a little worried we wouldn't have that opportunity. So I feel much better with that. And I think maybe even some members of the public will have an opportunity to, at that time, to weigh in. This is a heavy topic that, I mean, it impacts more than just Lakewood. People come from all over the region to use that facility, and we welcome them. And, you know, it's, again, a real crown jewel of the North Coast here. So, again, excellent work, Mr. Boss and Mr. Leininger, Mayor George, the whole entire administration. All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Shackner, any thoughts? Okay, good.
Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
to clarify, I'm sorry if this is redundant, but I just want to clarify, given the fact that we're talking about an alteration of the structure, so the city's the owner and operator, we contemplate retaining a private entity to do the day-to-day operation. The employees will be the hired third party's employees, okay? And then secondly, we're not necessarily paying them a fee. They may pay us a fee, or it could be any number of different arrangements, correct? Because they're gonna control the revenues
We control the
charged. When I go to pay, or my kid's team goes to pay, monies are gonna go to the operator, correct? And then what happens to those dollars afterwards is going to be governed by whatever contract and operating agreement that we work out. But we were just describing that there's a range of different financial models that could be proposed. So
They're city dollars. Sorry to interrupt. Those are city dollars, though. The operator is just simply caretaker of those dollars. Those are
Okay.
city revenues they received.
okay, so that really is a difference
Very
in
different.
approach
Yeah.
compared to where we are now through June 30. Because right now, those are private dollars, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's important to understand. So separately, all right, so the fee arrangement will be any number of different proposals by these four applicants, but it's most likely to be,
Their cost plus a fee is generally how
Okay.
it's going to be.
okay,
So, yes, there will be a fee involved for the city, but we'll be paying their negotiated rates for their employees based on their receipts and invoices that they can show us.
but then does the city own the risk? Because if sales are low, right? I mean, unless you link their compensation to volume at the gate, you know? So that's a difference, right? And that's part of the logic years ago of converting to essentially a private operator, even though we own the building. You know, the city owns the risk when it comes to the pools. If it's a hot summer, we have a lot of people at the pools, then we get complaints about that we're too successful and there's not enough room to park. But if it's a rainy day, then there's not as many customers at the pools, and then we end up with more of a financial exposure. So those are some things to think about. I look forward to further discussions, I guess.
Okay, good. Just to round it out, Mr. Baker, receiving a copy of that agreement after the selection of the, is that timing?
Yeah, if possible,
Okay.
just for an opportunity to review it.
Very good. I'm sure we can make that happen upon request and in camera, right? That's what the lawyers say, so you can.
Just underprivileged.
Underprivileged. Okay, good. I don't know legal terms. I just write the laws. I'm not a lawyer. Yeah, that's all right. Well, I appreciate it. If there's no further business, then we'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. I really appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you next time.